Loud explosions have been reported in the Lebanese capital Beirut as the Israeli military begins hitting targets belonging to Hezbollah. This comes after Hezbollah said it fired rockets and drones into Israel in response to the killing of Iran's supreme leader. SABC News Correspondent Blake Sifton joins us for more. Blake, perhaps just give us some more developments. What has happened overnight, and also talk to us about the situation in Dubai this morning.
Good morning. Just to bring you up to speed on what's happening where I am, we actually just heard two loud explosions here no more than 1 or 2 minutes ago. Very likely interceptions of a drone or of a missile. It's hard to tell. It had been quiet overnight after a few rounds of incoming fire yesterday. That being said, I should say that the roads are busy, people are walking around. It doesn't feel like a city under attack. People are taking this in stride, and the vast majority of the missiles and drones that have been fired toward U.S. targets here have been shot down. Now, it's a completely different situation, as you say, in Lebanon, in a war that in 2 days has seen dramatic, almost shocking developments. We have another dramatic and shocking development, which is that Hezbollah has joined the war. They did not join the 12-day war between Israel and Iran in June, and they've been holding their fire back from Israel since the ceasefire was brokered in November 2024 that ended the conflict between them, even though Israel has been bombing Hezbollah targets in Lebanon almost every single day for over a year. But now with the killing of Iran's supreme leader, Hezbollah, we understand, has responded. They say they fired a series of missiles at a missile defense site north of Haifa in revenge for the killing of Iran's supreme leader. Now, before this war started, Israel had, through back channels and through the Lebanese government, communicated that if Hezbollah joined the war, they would punish essentially Lebanon, including bombing infrastructure, including possibly the airport, which was bombed and taken out of operation in the 2006 war between Israel and Hezbollah, but not in the last war in 2024. We understand from medical sources in Beirut that some 10 people have been killed in Beirut's southern suburb. That is a Hezbollah stronghold. Large numbers of people are said to be fleeing southern Lebanon, as well as that southern suburb of Beirut. It's also worth noting, of course, that this wasn't entirely unexpected. Before the Israelis and the Americans began bombing Iran on Saturday morning, the first news of the day actually was a wave of Israeli airstrikes on Hezbollah targets in Lebanon. Now, they were more widespread than normal. They weren't excessive by Israeli standards, but they did seem, in retrospect, to have been an effort to essentially keep Hezbollah's heads down for a period when the war with Iran began.
Just in terms of Blake, and I ask you this, I mean, I'm just trying to be on top of as much news as possible. I mean, I'm seeing reports, and it's so difficult, and I imagine you're seeing it as well. There's just so much news doing the rounds that it's hard to actually sift through what's real and what's not real. But I am seeing some reports coming through of very heavy explosions in Iran that just struck not too long ago, a couple of minutes ago, and also comments coming from Iran saying that they will not negotiate with the United States, even after Trump had said that Iran are open to negotiations. So there really is a lot happening, and these hours are incredibly, incredibly important into this particular war and conflict.
Well, that's right. There is so much happening simultaneously in so many countries that it's hard to keep track of everything. Some things that are very important are seemingly slipping through the cracks and not getting the attention they deserve. As far as we understand, those heavy airstrikes in Iran are continuing. They're not letting up at all. The U.S. military and the Israelis have put out information on how many sorties they've carried out, how many bombs they've dropped. It is a very large number. And we understand that B-2 bombers were used by the United States. These are the massive bombs that drop bunker-busting bombs. They fly from the United States or from a base in Diego Garcia because they're so heavy. Only so many airports can handle them, air bases. And we understand those were used against deeply embedded Iranian ballistic missile facilities. So they really are, the Israelis and the Americans really are essentially pounding Iran as hard as possible. Now, one thing that I don't think got the attention it deserves yesterday that we really do need to keep a close eye on is the situation in the Strait of Hormuz. Now, that is a narrow waterway between Iran and Oman. It's a vital choke point where around a quarter of the world's oil supply passes through on its way out of the Persian Gulf, as well as a very large amount of liquefied natural gas. In the past, when Iran has been threatened with attack, really for years, they have threatened to block the Strait of Hormuz. They say they will target ships with missiles, or they will lay maritime mines, and they will prevent that route from being used for the shipment of oil. And on Saturday, the IRGC did tell ships that they were no longer allowed to pass through that area. And yesterday, Sunday, there was 3 separate reports of different ships being targeted. At least 2 of them were oil tankers. They were struck by some kind of object, whether they were drones or missiles. We understand in one incident, 4 sailors were injured, and the rest had to be evacuated. So if this is the beginning of Iran's attempt to completely seal the Strait of Hormuz, that of course will send shockwaves through oil markets, increasing oil prices and potentially shockwaves in the global economy. And of course, it could also see maritime battles being fought, because the United States does have destroyers, but also smaller combat ships in that area. And the Iranian Navy in recent years has really focused on small attack craft, realizing that with larger ships, they don't really have the firepower to match the United States, but they hope that using small, agile boats, they might be able to confront and possibly sink much more powerful and much larger U.S. ships. So I do think that area is going to be a focus.
All right, Blake, it really will be. I just, before I let you go, very quickly, I just want to find out from you. Obviously, you heard maybe it was an interception of a drone or whatever it was overhead. Air transport, and these are things I think people really want to hear. I mean, even just by hearing sounds like that, there has been talk that the airspace may open up later on this afternoon. This development, could this further shut the airspace down?
So what we've heard from authorities here is that the airspace is closed until this afternoon. However, I don't think it was ever realistic that it was going to reopen soon. We've had consistent missiles and drone attacks. I think countries are just giving an earliest possible deadline. Like, for example, in Israel, they've said the airport won't be closed until Friday. It will almost certainly be closed much later than that. So unfortunately, there doesn't seem to be much respite for people who are stranded by these flight cancellations across the region. Authorities here have said that they will support people. They will pay for hotels and for food for people whose hotel bookings ran out and were meant to leave. Or, of course, we need to remember that many people were simply transiting through these airports on their way to and from other destinations, and then when the war started, they were caught and stuck perhaps in Qatar or in the UAE. So it is quite a predicament for many people, but the people I've seen and spoken to, people do seem to be taking it in stride. The hotels are being very supportive. Everyone understands this is a very difficult situation. But despite things like this, despite the booms, life does continue on as normal. The major road down there beside me is full of cars. People are walking in the street. So it is a precarious situation, but people do seem to be taking it in stride.
We leave it there. Blake Sifton, thanks so much talking to us from Dubai as our SABC News correspondent. We also are going to be joined a little bit later on by some South Africans that are in Dubai and in Doha as well. So do stay tuned. That's coming up on the program.